our podium. Okay.
Don, that's green, right? Or
Yep.
blonde?
Oh, yep. Oh, yep.
All right. Remember how to share your screen and all? I'm gonna mute it right now just for a second. Why it's like really slow responding. Yeah. No, I don't see anybody yet. Anyway, just
On the meeting of the Mint Hill Planning Board for February the 15th, 2021 at 6:30. It's now 6:30 or so. We'll call it to order. We have a quorum. We have 4 here and we've got 2 that are going to come in on Zoom. So we do have a quorum. Even without the Zoom, we have a quorum. Roger, could I get you to do an invocation, please?
Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we thank you for this time we be together. We just pray for discernment, Lord, as we look at the issues confronting our community. And we just pray for direction and guidance as we move forward in these present times. And we just lift up our military, Lord, and our first responders, police and fire, and medical teams, Lord, that are out and dealing with the situations of our community every day. We just pray that you be with them, keep them safe and well. And again, we lift up our military all over the world and pray that you keep them and their families safe and well. We make these prayers in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Roger. Can I get an approval for the minutes of the November 16th, 2020 regular meeting we had?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Have a motion and a second. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. Okay. Any deletions or additions to the agenda items? It stands. John, any reports, committees, members, staff, anything?
No, sir.
All right. Let's get down to, there's no old business, so let's get to the new business. Discussion and recommendation on ZC 20-10 filed by NVR Incorporated to allow conditional district rezoning from R to RDOA CD to allow a residential development located at parcel numbers 135-38167, 135-38166, 135-38164, and 135-38165. Lawyers Road. John, turn it over to you.
Thank you. If it's okay, I'm going to ask the applicant. By the way, did you happen to watch the public hearing?
Yes.
Yeah, I did.
So everybody, okay. So what I would ask is the applicant to maybe come up and just summarize the presentation or go through the slides. I think, Peter, you said there were some slides you would like to go through, and then I'm open for
Okay.
questions. Okay.
All right. Sir, if I could get you to come up, state your name and address. You should be familiar with this.
Just 2 days ago.
Yes, sir.
Thanks, sir. You guys good if I, all right.
Yeah.
I'm Scott Glover, address 365 Delberg Street in Davidson. I work for NVR Inc., also known as Ryan Homes. That's probably how you're more familiar with us. We've been in Mint Hill for quite a while. We've been building here for 10 or 15 years, as you might be familiar. Places as far back as Heathfield, Meadows of Mint Hill, Stonebridge, Summerwood, and most recently Mint Hill Commons over by the Publix. So why are we here today? So we're excited about what we call the Helms property or Hillgrove Townhomes on Lawyers Road, as you're familiar with. We found that a lot of our buyers that were buying the townhomes in Mint Hill Commons were folks that were either in Mint Hill or in Matthews. So almost half, 48% of our buyers that bought in that neighborhood, specifically the townhomes, their number one reason for buying was, I want to stay here. I want to just get a smaller home with less maintenance. So we thought, okay, well, we have a captive audience. I know there's a bunch of people that live in Mint Hill. They're looking to stay in Mint Hill. They want a smaller house. They want less maintenance. They want to be able, when we're allowed to, go off and do their things and know that their yard is going to be maintained and taken care of. So we met Mr. Helms. We put his property under contract. And since then, over the last year, we've been working with the town. We've been working with the commissioners. We've been working with the neighbors. We've met pretty much every subdivision. In fact, I think we have met with every subdivision that's adjacent to our property. We've heard some of their concerns, and I'll talk about those just briefly tonight, so that way you're familiar. Why are we asking to change something that's an R zoning to a downtown overlay? Well, first and foremost, one of the things that seems, I don't want to say obvious, but it seems to make sense to us is we are proposing to build 5.2 homes per acre. The neighborhood that's just adjacent to us at the Traditions is 4.8 to the acre. It's a townhome community. It is not zoned in the downtown overlay, but it's virtually the same zoning. The second thing is we border a little bit of the downtown overlay at the town property that's owned on the other side of the creek, Irvin's Creek, which is then bordered on to Brighton Park. So, oh, yeah, maybe that would help. There we go. Sorry. So the property is up on the board now. Thank you. So we feel that we're in keeping with what the other previous townhome communities that have been built in town. The downtown overlay, as you know, one of the cornerstones of the downtown overlay is pedestrian friendly. And today, we probably all walked down through the Greenway down in Brighton Park. You walk for a while, you get to a dead end. I don't know if you can see where my cursor is, but you probably all know where it is. But probably right about here in the woods is where the dead end is. The last time I was there just was on a random Tuesday, and I probably saw 5 or 6 people. It wasn't the weather we're having today, but I did see 5 or 6 people walking on the trail, just making the U-turn, just turning around. It's really a trail to nowhere right now. So that's one of the things that we've talked to folks on staff, we've talked to the neighbors, we've talked to the commissioners since that time about what can we do to enhance that. And we've talked about, and we've proposed to add a trail connection across the creek into our subdivision. And also, again, I'm not sure how well you can see the cursor, but going out along the Irvin's Creek out to Apple Creek. So we're looking at making about 2,000 feet of additional trail connections, the bridge connection over Irvin's Creek. So we're really going to create a looping type of walking atmosphere in that area of town. We don't expect folks are going to abandon their cars just because we build a little, another half mile of trail. But if you need to go to Harris Teeter and you live in Apple Creek and you're just grabbing, hot dogs and rolls or something for a cookout that day, you might be inclined to ride your bike over and grab something like that instead of hopping in your car and heading over there. Again, once it turns nice again and we get a little bit better weather, maybe those folks are just getting out there for the sheer enjoyment of it. But it's going to link a lot of neighborhoods today that aren't linked by a walkable neighborhood. And today, there are parts of the downtown overlay district that are further away from the town center than what we're proposing right here. So we don't think it's that far out of the realm of that we're asking for something, for lack of a better way of saying it, satellite to be annexed into the downtown overlay. It's already touching some downtown overlay property. It's already touching some property that has about the same type of zoning. Or the same type of density, I should say. I'm sorry about that. No. Yeah, that's fine. Right here. Okay, great. Thanks. So up on your screens right now, you'll see where our site is. It's starred with the asterisk. But then you see where the downtown overlay, which is all the areas that are colored in different colors, whether it be the yellow or the orange. And there's also 2 radiuses there, one for a 5-mile walk, one's for a 10-mile walk. And we're well within might be stretching a little. We're in the 10-minute radius of being able to walk to the center part of town. So again, that's a big reason why we're asking for this type of use at this property. We're willing to build, again, about 2,000 linear feet of additional Greenway trail. We're willing to make that connection over Irvin's Creek. We're willing to make the connection down to Apple Creek. So that's going to open up the walking trails in Mint Hill to a lot of different people that currently, they have access, but it's not great access. In some cases, they might be driving to it at this point. The other thing, and Andrew's going to get into this in just a few minutes, you all are familiar with the intersection of True Light Church Road and Lawyers Road. Today, there's a warrant for a traffic light at that intersection. Again, Andrew's going to go more into the detail of that in just a moment. We don't have enough trips with the number of homes that generate a traffic impact study, but we did go ahead and do one anyway. But as part of the number of cars that we would be, new cars that would be using Lawyers Road in comparison to what is required, that itself does not warrant that new traffic signal at True Light Church Road. It's a dangerous intersection. Andrew will talk about it here in just a moment of what type of accident data there is at that intersection. But we're willing to, as part of this proposal, is install a traffic light and a signalized crosswalk for the folks on that side of True Light Church Road to be able to come over and use some of that pedestrian-friendly infrastructure that's either there today or going to be there in the future. So that includes the folks that live in St. Ives and some of the new things that are going on True Light Church Road. I'm going to turn it over to Peter Tadgy. He's our works for ESP, who is our engineer. He's going to go into a little bit more of the technical parts of our presentation tonight, and I'll be here to answer any questions you may have throughout the night. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairman, bit of handout approach.
Sure.
This is not in the presentation. It sort of helps further the trail that Scott was discussing as it relates to property and surrounding neighborhoods. My name is Peter Tadgy, ESP Associates, consulting planners, landscape architects, and engineers. They're helping NV Ryan with the entitlement process. And I appreciate your consideration tonight and the ability to speak. We will try to be brief. I know you mentioned that you had an opportunity to look at the public hearing documents. The site it's in a key location, and I'll show you a couple other plan related documents that are here in the town of Mint Hill. The downtown master plan, the pedestrian overlay, your greenways document, the one with the county. There isn't a whole lot of land near downtown that's still available. This is a key parcel. As Scott mentioned, it's right outside the overlay. You can see the white dash line that is the current DOA boundary. Interestingly enough, there's two land uses there. It's a senior living facility and the Traditions at Lawyers Glen, which is a Portrait Homes project. It's duplexes, it's townhomes. In effect, it's the one that Scott mentioned that is very close in density. They've come out, we've met with them several times. They're very vocal about just developing this property. And we've met with them several times and explained the rigor and the requirements of not only the town's rules, but the county PCO stormwater requirements, NCDOT. We'll talk about the traffic improvements. We have our traffic engineer tonight to answer questions about that. But there's a whole host of agencies that are involved, and your rules have changed over time. There are issues along Irving Creek. It's a major tributary. It floods. We are going to be required to comply with your new requirements for stormwater to 10-year, 25-year storm. You can see the large pond there at the end of the site. We've got a significant amount of open space. We're trying to cluster the development. So we can take care of those requirements on our property. There's some issues with that pond. You can see the little blue pond right at the kind of like the dog leg in the property. Hasn't been serviced for a number of years. The weir is clogged. There's beaver dam. So what happens, that gets wet, it gets up, it floods, it goes on the adjacent owner's property. So there's complaints about that. We're going to be required to adhere to all these new rules that a lot of the surrounding development has not. Probably Brighton Park has had new requirements with stormwater, PCO buffers, that type of development. So we're trying to communicate that with the neighbors. You guys know that you know, those kind of requirements is pretty much what is the law of the land. The plan itself, it meets all your requirements for a DOA type attached community in terms of the amount of open space. It's probably double the amount of open space that's required, how the units are positioned and oriented to either face a public street or an open space green area. We've taken careful consideration going through the PCO review process and working with the town planner to make sure we have a plan that makes sense. Plenty of guest space parking. There's 43, 45 spaces for guests. It's all alley loaded. We'll look at the units here in a little bit. So the idea is it's on the edge of the overlay. And you can see from the various regulatory documents, and these were shared the other night at the public hearing, the zoning plan, the Downtown Hill Master Plan, considerations for how this downtown area is going to grow, and what are the things you guys are looking for. And we believe that this project coincides with what those visions entail. There it is in relationship to the overlay. There's been commentary about the overlay is already set. Well, you can see how it kind of juts out in different areas. It's not fully organized. We do abut it. There is that interesting gap between us up there in the northeast corner with the traditions at Lawyers Glen, another attached community, but it's zoned R. Pedestrian connectivity. That's a pretty highly held principle here in Mint Hill. And as Scott mentioned, every time I come to town, if I do a site visit or we walk this property or if we're downtown, people are out walking. They love to walk in Mint Hill. Unfortunately, you can't get people that want to talk for a project to come out as much as the ones that don't like a project. But we have met and they heard about the Greenway. They're excited. They're interested. When's it going to happen? Oh my goodness, you're going to connect all these areas so I don't have to walk, or I don't have to get in my car to drive over to Publix. I can walk, I can take a bike, I can push my baby in a stroller. We've heard mention of golf carts. The trail would be suitably sized in that regard. So it sort of fits in to the PED plan, the Downtown Hill Master Plan, and the Greenways plan. Important component. We've worked with the town planner and various agencies that are involved with planning Greenways. You'll see in your packet tonight comment that we are not compliant with the land use plan. Well, we've taken that pedestrian concentric circle diagram. This is your land use plan. We're under the understanding that it's being updated. It's 10 going on 11 years out of date. If you look at that and you look at the zoning map, you can see a lot has happened since 2010. A lot of growth, a lot of improvement. That area is intended to grow based on these other planning documents. And I think the underline is it's not 1 acre lots that you want to surround the overlay with. You want to create density. You want to create higher dense development as it's outlined in your downtown master plan, and encourage pedestrian connectivity. Get people out of their cars and get them walking. So that graphic there is your land use plan. I agree. There's a lot of things that aren't consistent with that. You could say that about a lot of projects that are occurring because it's 11 years out of date. You can say it's inconsistent, but there's a however at the end of that statement as it relates to the other planning documents which dictate how you want to grow. We talked a little bit about the neighbors. We've met with them on several occasions. A lot of conversation about how dense this project is. We're almost compatible right up to a half a unit per acre, 4.85 and 5.2. That's the approved plan from the file. They said we were Jimmy in the math. We weren't calculating density appropriately. So project information, a little more density, a lot more facilities. Developers are generally responsible to build traffic lights, turn lanes, infrastructure. Tax dollars are stretched thin. It's not coming from the public coffers. It comes from development. Well, if this was half acre lots or acre lots, you wouldn't have a greenway. People wouldn't be dedicating and building a greenway in their backyard. They wouldn't want that. Transportation improvements would be probably less. We're doing full frontage improvements. We have Andrew Eagle here from Ramey Kemp to talk about the traffic study. Been working with NCDOT, and the stoplight was a negotiated outcome. We were going to participate and pay for that. Well, there's no money. It's not funded through DOT. The town said absolutely not. We're not going to do a stoplight on a state road. So Mr. Glover and his team came together and they're going to install a stoplight. It's a safety issue. There's people that, as you heard on the public hearing, that wrote letters about the concerns, about the accidents that are occurring out there to slow down traffic. Buffers, there's a lot of open space, over 40%. Got a large buffer along the roadway, which a lot of projects don't have, a 70-foot buffer. Buffers adjacent to the adjacent single family. And there's even a buffer against the like use. There's a ravine there. They have a vegetated buffer. We have a vegetated buffer. It's going to be screened. In addition to requirements that staff has, we'll have to landscape and infill. Parking, stormwater, we've talked about. This was the technical memorandum that was prepared and submitted to both DOT and staff here, indicating that we're below the threshold for having to even do a traffic study. But we wanted to be good neighbors. We wanted to be good applicants and be able to talk intelligently about traffic. So we put together that and made some comparisons to a traditional single family development. And there's commentary about it's 130 units. There's going to be 260 cars coming out of there. Well, that's really not the accurate math. And if you can see up the top there, there's an actual peak hour trip generation. And I'm not the expert. Andrew Eagle is here. So if you have questions, we'd certainly encourage him to be able to talk about this. Architecture, you have some guidelines. We believe that we address those. Scott's talked a lot about NVR projects in the surrounding vicinity. These are attractive looking homes, alley loaded, 2-story, a lot of architectural features. So we think it's aesthetically pleasing and meets all your guidelines. Amenities, even though there's not a structured amenity like a pool and a clubhouse, there just aren't enough units to warrant that. There are a lot of passive open space, pocket parks, open greens, where there'll be shelters, gazebos. There's a private trail that would connect into the public trail. As Scott mentioned, it's roughly about 2,000 lineal feet. It's going to be bridged over and connected to the existing town land. So the site is definitely going to have amenities. In summary, I mean, here are the things that the developer is willing to do in the event that this project is favorably considered by you folks and the Board of Commissioners. This is about the Greenway construction, pedestrian bridge over to Brighton Park to create connectivity so you can walk from Apple Creek all the way over to Brighton Park. And then fund and install the new stoplight, which, as Scott mentioned, has been warranted for almost going on 4 years now. And there's no money to install that infrastructure. We're here for questions that the board may have. As I indicated, we have our traffic expert, and he's willing to fill in the blanks and provide you guys with information. We respectfully request your favorable approval. What I saw in the staff materials was we're not consistent with the land use plan. We've talked a little bit about that. I think when the land use plan is updated, it may be consistent. I mean, there has been discussion about including the traditions because it's a townhome development. It's not allowed under our zoning, and including a project of this nature. So these types of public infrastructure improvements can be manifested and adapted and then installed. If it goes back to our single family lots, all those things can happen. And we think that would not be consistent with what your planning documents are telling us. This is how we want to grow. These are the things that we see Mint Hill and its citizens being able to harvest and utilize. So with that, any questions, we're happy to be at your service here.
So we thank you all for your presentation. Roger, want to start with you?
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. The first question I would have is, in this kind of development, the parking, the additional parking of the 45 spaces for 130, I think you said units.
Yes, sir.
What I look at is I look at Brighton Park now, and there's just a real issue for garages are great, but from what I see at Brighton Park, you know, they use them to put stuff in. They don't, not cars. The cars are all over the street. And so, and it makes it very difficult for emergency apparatus, for police, fire, and medical to access these situations, and especially, in my opinion, fire, because the roads get very full, and any extra parking tends to become the people that are closest to there. They use those for their own vehicles. But my big concern is the the fire access, and I do see you have a proposed fire lane, but my concern is with 130 units, 45 spaces to me is grossly inadequate. But just because of what I've seen, what else we have here in Mint Hill.
Yes,
And,
sir.
I like the Greenway connectivity. I like all that, but I'm, and that is an important piece. I like the amenities that you're showing, but I was part of the land use plan 10 years ago, and about 12 really from the time we started. And I do understand that there needs to be updates, but I got to tell you where I'm at, and that is, I don't know if these are the updates that are necessary to put this type of density when it's outside of the realm. That does concern me greatly. And I know I agree that it probably is going to be updated, but there's a lot of things that are going to happen that haven't happened yet. So, so those are my two big concerns is if you take it for what it is, I don't think there's enough parking for that amount of 260 vehicles. Okay. And then I still have a large question on to the density in that particular spot in the middle of, single family dwellings with, 2 to an acre maximum. So those are my concerns. I know there's not a question there, but let me rephrase and just say this. How do you propose that in the middle of the night when most people are home and you got 260 vehicles in this environment, how do emergency vehicles, i.e. mostly fire equipment, access?
Certainly. And if I may, I'm going to shoot the 2 slides. This first one under parking. The 43 are just the visitor spots. Those are when grandma and grandpa come over or brother and sister.
Yes,
so
but
those
you
are,
and I both know, I'm sorry to interrupt, you and I both know this mostly people that have their extra cars because the garages are full. So either it's out on
Okay.
the street or in a parking space. So, now just because I understand that that's a great concept, but there's no way to police that. And I have children that live in these type of developments and there is never any place to park. Okay, when you go to see them, except in the middle of the road, almost. So excuse me,
okay.
go right ahead.
Well, that's a summary of the parking, 260 garage spots. And I confess, I don't know what size garages they have in Brighton Park. I assume there's a combination of 1 and 2 car garages. These are all 2. So there's 260 garage spots. There's driveway spots for some of the units. There's on-street parking. The mention of the fire concern, the alleys will be oversized. They'll be 24 feet. They will not be able to park in the alleys. They'll be signed and enforced by the HOA. There is on-street parking on one side coming in on the public road. So those are additional spots. The fire lane was a trade-off. The easternmost entrance there, you can see it says emergency access. We had that shown on an earlier plan as a full right-of-way coming out. And there was a disagreement between DOT and your staff about the location of that in relationship to True Light Church Road. The town wanted a median out there to be constructed to make it a right in, right out. We were agreeable with that. And CDOT said, oh, heck no, you're not putting a median out in the middle of our state road. There is not enough frontage to put 2 full movement access points along that frontage and space them in accordance with DOT's criteria. So the trade-off was to extend the alley up and limit that type of access for emergency vehicles. We ran the auto turn program, which is a technical program in AutoCAD. We could run the trash truck and the fire truck through that entire alley system and throughout the property. So Maneuverability is there. That's going to be required by the fire marshal regardless. We'll have to prove that and submit that when we go in for construction documents. So it does have plenty of access, emergency access. We feel that there's a bunch of parking, well over 300 spaces combining the garages, and you're right, sir. People do tend to store things in their garages. So that is a limitation. But that's our response to your question, sir.
Okay. That's all I have right now, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, thank you, Rob. Eric?
Yeah, I'd like to kind of quote you. I think you said something along the lines of, it's not 1 acre lots you want to surround your downtown district with as far as future growth. And I would certainly agree to some extent, but being on the fringe, I'm in agreement with Roger. This does seem pretty dense to still be outside of that downtown overlay. Has there been any consideration to more of like a mixed development or something to alleviate quite so much density on this project?
So some detached and attached as a way to mitigate the 5.2. No, we have not explored that. We were of the opinion, based on the development pattern that's there with 4.8 right next door, zoned R between us and the overlay, that this would be an appropriate relationship to fill out that concentric ring. Those plans that I put up on the board, those talk about higher dense transitional developments between the downtown overlay and what they call the outer rings, the areas which are more traditional, single family detached. Sir, at your mention, the 2 to the acre, that is not what your plans say, to put 2 to the acre in this location. And that's what these plates are designed to. They want green spaces, they want ped connections, they want transitional development, they don't want high rises, they don't want stacked flats. It doesn't specify a density, unfortunately, but it is clear that it's not acre lots or half acre lots, if you read through the narrative in any of those planning documents.
And the other question I had was, has there been much study as far as runoff out there? I know that I actually went out and visited the property the other day, and all the rain, I mean, it looked like it was just running.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, I mean,
It's a mess
solid-
right now.
Solidly
It's-
compacted.
It's just Yahoo. It's a ridge down the middle and it shoots to the creek, and your rules will prevent that from happening. There is a pre versus post condition. I don't see our engineer here tonight. I spoke to him last Thursday. I handed out his name of the neighbors. I said, Steve, I'm sorry, but they have a lot of stormwater questions, but your rules do not allow us to shed rain onto other properties. That's what that large pond is in the back of the property there. We had to oversize that 125% of the capacity. That's, I always ask my engineers, well, why do they make us do that? Well, they just want to be darn sure that you can satisfy and detain that water, treat it for the 2, 10, 25-year storm. And if you look around here, hardly any of these projects have large stormwater basins. That's why there's a flooding problem. Old school, let her rip into the floodplain. Well, guess what? As we grow, that strategy doesn't work. I heard one of the commissioners mention he gets water up his chain link fence about 2.5, 3 feet high. We won't be able to contribute to that by law, by your requirements. We're gonna have to detain anything up and above. They say, all this pavement, all these rooftops, that's all gonna be detained and released over time. We are not contributing to that flooding problem. That is a problem that has occurred historically due to prior rules either not in effect or not requiring what we're going to have to comply with. Your new rules are very stringent. That's all I got.
Okay. Jennifer,
I do not have any questions.
Roger, anything else?
Well, the only thing I would follow up with is, I know you compare it to lawyers next door, but now, correct me if I'm wrong, your development is not a senior living development.
No, sir, it's not age targeted.
Yeah,
It's-
and so
it's-
I do know, I know you're using that for a comparison as far as how close in density you are.
Yes, sir.
But I think we could both agree what goes on in senior living will be much less than plus cars. Because of the type of space it is. I don't think there's near the traffic in a senior living community as there would be into a standard community, which is basically designed for younger people, I would think, and or empty nesters or more active people, I should say, more active people. And so
Yes, sir.
how do you I've got to understand, how do you handle that volume in and out and a place to put all the vehicles? Because that's my big concern. I come from fire background and those types of things. So my big concern is, how do you handle that volume of cars when basically everybody's home? It's just going to be awfully tight. It's just going to be, and I understand that's the type of community that is, but my other concern is I just think it's in conflict with what we did plan originally, and that hasn't been changed yet, and I misspoke a little bit before what I would like to see. Everybody has an idea of what they'd like to see changed, right? If we change the downtown overlay plan. And, and I've just seen some extremely good developments work extremely well in that 2 per acre density, so where y'all obviously would like to see it change to this zoning. I like the 2 per, but like I said, I have a hard time buying into how does this traffic plan work?
I appreciate that. And the word that we were using on Thursday night and the word that we used with the community was trust. And I think the only way to really respond to your question is your trust in your staff, your trust in the rules that you guys have adopted, trust in your UDO, the kinds of things that the state of North Carolina and the town of Mint Hill is requiring in terms of the traffic mitigation.
Mhm.
That's how you handle it. Full frontage improvements, turn lanes. What happens when you drive down Lawyers Road now? I was down there, we had another community meeting on site two Thursdays ago. And as soon as I want to go left, everybody's stacking up behind me. It's like failure, and the traffic engineer can talk about that. Well, the turn lanes are designated to allow that through movement. Left turn lane with several hundred feet of storage, right turn lane, a stoplight. As we grow, that's how those things are handled, sir. That would be our answer. And then trust in your staff that the rules that are in place and their review and their insistence to mitigate those kinds of concerns. And you're right on, sir. Those things are real. And why are they there? Because those rules weren't in place years ago.
Yeah, I have full confidence in our staff. It's just there's been a few times in history that in our community that we've asked the staff to do things that are pretty much impossible. Okay, because of the situation we put them in, because I'm allowing something that is pretty hard to mitigate once it gets out there and becomes real. And on paper, it looks like it works good, but I wouldn't mind, Mr. Chairman, hearing from the traffic person as far as how this, and my bigger concern, yes, access to Lawyers Road, but my bigger concern is the flow within the development itself, how the residents.
Yeah, my name is Andrew Eagle. I'm with Ramey Kemp Associates.
Could
I'm
you
the
state your
traffic
name
engineer.
again?
I'm sorry,
State your name again, please.
Andrew Eagle
Andrew.
with Ramey Kemp Associates. Our office is at 8210 University Executive Park Drive, Suite 220 in Charlotte. When we looked at the study, we're more concerned of the public roadways, Lawyers Road, True Light Church Road. So we haven't really dug into internal circulation within the site and parking within the site. That's typically not something that the traffic engineer looks like. That's more of a site plan issue. And with the site engineer not being here, Peter, do you happen to know the cross-section width of the roads within the site?
It'd be a 56-foot right of way in the center of town.
Okay. And I know you mentioned there was some on-street parking. So I wasn't sure how much room there is if there's cars parked on street, and then how much width is left on top of that. I'm sure enough to get 2 lane.
Correct. We like the standard right of way section that's in the UDO.
Mhm.
from the land development standard.
So,
Comply with that.
I mean, I can't really speak further than that on the internals.
Okay.
But to give an idea of kind of the density and how that plays into number of trips the site would be generating. Again, we coordinated with NCDOT and the town. The number of trips the site would generate are well below the thresholds that would require doing a TIA. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Peter. You see there at the multifamily homes, very top table there, 130 units generate less than 1,000 daily trips. Generates about 1 trip every minute during the AM peak hour, and a little bit more than 1 trip every minute during the PM peak hour. You're looking at the intersection of Lawyers Road and True Light Church Road. In talking with NCDOT, they had actually performed a signal warrant analysis in the year 2017 and found that a signal was warranted based off the 2017 numbers. It's been 3 years since then, and there's really not been any movement on installing the signal there on NCDOT's part. We followed up with them again to say, you know, if this development doesn't go through and put in the signal themselves, does DOT have any sort of timeline or plan or anything for the signal? And their response was, we have no funding for it. So there is no timetable, no schedule at all on that part of it either. As far as the number of vehicles, the development would be adding to that Lawyers Road and True Light Church Road intersection. Again, it'd probably be roughly around, actually it'd be less than a vehicle every minute being added to that entire intersection. So if you can imagine yourself sitting at a traffic light, you know, typically they're anywhere from a minute to a half to 2 minutes long for a full cycle. You know, in that time, you're only going to see maybe 1 or 2 additional vehicles at that light from this development. So I'd be happy to answer any other questions you might have.
You all right?
One other thing, what do you see the impact with the new signal there at True Light versus getting back down to the Brighton Park area and to Evans and that type of thing, flowing back out into Lawyers? Is that a mitigating factor that will help ease that burden of the downtown area right there? Or is that something, how do you see that on the traffic study with that new light in there?
Sure. Yeah, I'd have to look back through the detailed analysis here, but I believe really the reasoning for the signal was due to the amount of traffic on Lawyers Road already
Mhm.
and not being enough gaps in the traffic to let traffic from True Light Church Road enter Lawyers Road. That's typically the case in some of these areas where you have a main roadway and a smaller minor street. Main roadway is usually so heavily traveled that there's just not enough gaps in traffic. So that would help that situation to help people from
But
True
yet
Light
you're,
Church Road.
but yet you found it would make no difference at all, right?
What's that?
But your study found that it would make no difference at all.
We
this
didn't
development.
look into the exact, traffic analysis, traffic modeling.
No, I
We
meant
looked
just
at
in
the-
general, what you said was with the less than 1,000 trips a day would really make no virtual impact.
Right. Yeah, from this development, yeah, there's hardly any trips from this development that would
Okay.
cause any impact there on Lawyers Road or True Light Church Road.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. I'm not sure who they're for, but I'll throw them out and then whoever needs to answer can step up to the mic and answer. But so I see on here that you have 42 units versus 130 units. So y'all have done some looking at what it would be if you followed our land use plan. Is that correct?
That's what that comparison table is designed to communicate.
So you're going 3 times as much as what the land use plan recommends right now, basically, more than that.
Yes, sir.
So what's driving the plan? I mean, is it strictly just the money? I mean, is that what drives this plan? To go against the land use plan, your plan versus the land use plan?
I hate to use a trendy saying, but it's sort of the greater of, I'll use the greater of two goods.
Mhm.
After hearing from the town and hearing all the things that they wanted to see, the Greenway was it was just, you're gonna do a Greenway. This is in the Greenway plan. I showed it on there. It goes right along the side in Irving Creek. And then the stoplight just woo-hoo, came out of the blue. We tried to figure out a funding formula. When you start adding up all these improvements, are probably getting down to about $1 million of private investment. They got to be paid for some way. And 42 units is not going to happen. And we didn't want to sit and communicate like it's like a card game, but it's really to allow the developer to make all these wonderful public improvements. There has to be an ability to pay for them. And that's really the answer to the question, how we derived. We were at a lot higher units, but once we went in and started dealing with the technical matters and submitted the PCO plan, did the calculations, ran the fire model, the units kept coming down, and we're at 130. That's not where we started. We were getting as close to 6 units to the acre as we could. That was, ooh, that's a little bit too high. Well, get it down to 5, guys, get it down to close to 5. We're at 5.2. We looked at the neighbors, that kind of discussion. And then this list just kind of kept growing.
Yeah.
With the bridges and the trails now got to be 12 foot wide and the bridge has got to be so many feet wide. So the costs just kept going up, and that's how we backed into that number, sir.
Understand. So the market that you're going for is what? And what is your price point? Because you had said earlier that, that you when you sold them over here, that there was a lot of people in Mint Hill who'd been here for a while, wanted to stay in Mint Hill, but they didn't want to have the maintenance. So I'm assuming these would be older people that y'all are seeing this. I mean, so I'm not going to lead you in. You tell me what
Right.
your market was.
Right. So I forget who said it earlier, but there was actually a mixed market over there of some folks that were downsizing, empty nesters, who they went from having 3 or 4 people in their families to now down to 1 or 2. So it was a combination of that, and then some younger folks as well. But the common theme that we heard behind it was low maintenance, low maintenance, low maintenance.
Mhm.
So I know I'm not really answering your question other than saying it is a mixed market that we are going after. These are going to be mostly 3-bedroom homes. So I imagine we're going to see about the same type of mix that we saw in Mint Hill Commons that we would be seeing here.
What's your price point?
Probably at this point around 300,000. Peter mentioned earlier that we're proposing to spend almost $1 million in infrastructure between the trail and the traffic light and some of the road improvements on Lawyers Road. So you add that in, and the price of the land isn't inexpensive anymore. So it does drive that price up over time.
Yeah.
So we're trying, again, the average price in Mint Hill is going up very quickly, just like it is everywhere else. We're trying to find a price where people that are downsizing can afford to pay a little bit less.
Let me ask you, as a developer, and I don't know the answer to this,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe there isn't an answer to it, but is there a price point where these places are built that they, at some time, and it's usually not in the beginning, but it's later on, that these turn into rental properties, that people buy them as investments? Is there a price point for that?
It typically happens in a lower price point. And I'm saying it's typical, right? It's
Yeah.
not always. If you go into some of the places infill in Charlotte, in South End or in the NODA area, you'll find people paying $500,000 and renting them out, right? I'm glad you brought that up though, because that was a concern that's come up with some of the neighbors, and that came up during the neighborhood meeting that we had about rentals. And we're not looking to sell to investors who are going to flip and have everything be a rental. So we typically write into our HOA documents that there's nothing less than some sort of time frame that's a long-term lease. So usually that's 12 months. So that would prevent somebody from buying the unit, buying the home, and doing an Airbnb or selling or renting on a 30-day rolling basis.
I have
So-
a question based on that. Do you have any intentions of putting a restriction in your covenants on the percentage that could be allowed to be used as rental units?
It's a really good question, and it ends up being a very difficult thing to monitor. So that's why instead of doing that, we have done that in the past. And the HOA management companies that manage the companies long after we're gone have told us that it's really hard to monitor. So let's just, for a rough number, let's just say no more than 20%. And 20% are rented, and then you have a job that's taking you out of the market. And maybe it's not a good market where you can sell right now. You'd have to take a loss in order to sell it. So instead of being trapped, you do nothing less than a 12-month rental, for instance. And that tends to, you're getting the right type of renter at that point. You're getting somebody who's going to care for the property because they're going to be there long-term. They're locked into something like that. And then keep in mind also that these are completely maintenance-free exteriors. So your lawn is maintained, your pine needles, your shrubs, your painting, your roof. So in 15 years, if you're driving through one of these communities, you may not be able to tell which one's a rental and which one's for sale. But if you look up and do any research on Ryan Homes, we are a for sale builder. That is absolutely our intent here. And the way we're going to help with the rental problem is to do limit on the timing of the rentals. So that no less than, say, 12 months.
So, all right, so let's assume you got these nice trails, you got bridges, you've got all these exteriors, you've got road. Who takes care of the roads? Do we have the roads, John, or does that still stay within the development?
Ultimately, it would be county.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
over some period of time. So, I mean, there must be quite a bit of upkeep to keep this stuff in the shape that you're talking about 10 or 15 years from now.
Mhm.
Now, do y'all stay involved in that, or once this thing is sold out, you're gone and you're trying to get us to put density somewhere else in Mint Hill? Being facetious, but
I
you get
understand.
my point,
I understand.
right?
So when we're done with the community, we are done. We turn it over to the homeowners. So
Right.
during the time that we're developing, we would be the board. So we would have 3 members say on the board. And then once maybe 100 homes are sold, every set of HOA documents are set up a little bit differently, but maybe once there's 100 occupants, there would be an additional homeowner board member on to start training them on how the board is run. And then we would eventually bring a second person on. And then when we're sold out, we would turn all 5 board of director spots over to the homeowners.
Right.
We would hope that they would stay with the same management company. So if we hire management company X, they already know how the community is run. They know the budget down to the dollar, how much it takes to keep the upkeep up. They know the due structure. So let's just say on top of your mortgage payment or on top of your house price, you might be paying $150 a month. And that's going to get all the maintenance that we talked about earlier. And it's also getting the insurance. So that's the really nice thing about the townhomes. The HOA keeps the insurance. So if there's a calamity on the middle unit of a 5-row building, you don't have to wait for the homeowner's insurance company to get through the process and get that, rebuilt again so the community looks good. It's the homeowners association's insurance company that takes care of that. I don't know if I answered more than what you were looking for.
Well, you did, but that's good.
Okay.
Thanks for the information. I mean,
Okay.
because I never really understand when we step into some of those sometimes. I'm sure they're different for different developments, but yeah.
But that's a good ballpark. It's about $150 a month in addition to what you're paying for everything else.
One last thought, sir. It's a question that we were asked, and I'll pose it. It's from one of your colleagues, one of your policy board members. The question we were asked, and I don't know the answer, and maybe you can help us, is the downsizing, mom and dad, kids go off to college, one of them dies. We had a lady speak the other night she's the director of a funeral home across the street. And she said, well, I don't want to put she's in Bright Park, it's a townhome, she's gonna sell it. I don't want to put a sign in my yard, I don't want people hassling me. So she talked to a broker. She sold her unit in like 3 hours, just like that. There was a demand for that type of unit. And the question that I'm going to pose from one of your colleagues is, where are these people going to live? Where does mom and grandma, the one in the 1 acre lot, and when you drive around some of these subdivisions, we got the lawn services, these homes are gorgeous and they're big. And I live in a small lot in South Park, it's like 1/8 of an acre. And if I want to do the yard work, I'm there all weekend, that's me, I'm working all weekend. So where are these people going to go with maintenance-free living and affordable home as you're pricing folks out of Mint Hill? And his comment was, well, good gosh, one of our fire chiefs have to drive from Midlands, somewhere far away, can't live in Mint Hill. Teachers, police officers, mailmen, where are these people going to live? And if we continue to say acre lots, $500,000 homes, you're effectively squeezing out a lot of the people that want to live here and don't want to have to leave Mint Hill because my partner died, you know, my husband died.
Yeah, and I don't know the answer to that, but those are the answers. I was on the original land use plan.
Mhm.
And those are the questions that are posed to people that are on the land use plan as you're developing this scheme of things so that you don't get happenstance. And so, it's kind of like, how do we not follow some sort of plan? I mean, in kind of that's kind of where I am right now is, how do we not follow what we've put down on paper? We've held some other people to it. And once we let somebody get outside of that land use plan, now if the board of commissioners want to do it, that's a whole different game. But our job is basically to follow ordinances and plans as best we can. Yeah, we can vary from that some, but if we start setting precedents where somebody can come in and do densities or do that, we got to be very careful what we've done here for the next group that comes in and says, well, you did it for those guys, so you got to be, it's a tough situation to be in here. I mean, among us, we got to figure out what's the right way to go at it. So yeah, I don't have anything else to say, but you had something else, right?
I was going to ask, I know when we did the land use plan too, the demographic was almost 68% of the growth was going to be in the empty nesters, 55 plus, and all that are looking for the, maintained yard, looking for the less maintenance, looking for the more green space, looking for, want to stay in the area, but don't want the upkeep. And I was just curious, what is the demographic that you're after with this type of development? Because Ryan Holmes has been, like you said, been in Mint Hill and been, using and making, tremendous home sites for people in a unique community, which Mint Hill is. It's a unique community, and that's our job, make sure we keep it that way.
Right.
And obviously we're doing something right because Ryan's going to stay around,
Right.
okay? Because it's a popular place. But what is the demographic you're after?
We thought I'm going to talk about history, right? So we thought in Mint Hill Commons, we were going to be almost exclusively empty nesters. In fact, the units we were building had the bedroom on the first floor. And that's not what it ended up being. So we were learning this. The market's a little bit smarter than what we are. It was a big part of the market, probably about half. There weren't a lot of townhomes, 52 or 54 townhomes over there. There weren't many, but about half of them were empty nesters and half of them were younger, not empty nesters, I'll say.
That's, that goes back to my concern is I don't think this is an empty nester community because I don't think, are the bedrooms on the first floor in these units?
The bedrooms can go either, well, there's always 2 bedrooms up. Some of them have a bedroom down and some of them have 3. So let me back up.
Speaking as
Some are
empty
1
nester-
down and 2 up and some are 3 up.
Yeah, speaking as an empty nester, stairs is something that's not a big
Mhm.
hot button on my list
Right.
of things that I want after. So, okay, I was just curious if the demographic from when we did the land use plan had changed. What you saw because y'all build all types of, family dwellings. So, I was just curious what y'all were seeing.
When we built in Mint Hill, Meadows and Mint Hill, most people were buying ranches, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we found over there as well. So again, that was the thought process going in the Mint Hill Commons. And certainly we built the patio homes, the single family homes. Primarily those were empty nesters, but in the townhomes, again, market
Yeah, you
proved that
get
it's
much younger
a
crowd
little smarter than us, half and half.
and have multiple cars.
Are Scott and Kenny on here?
Yes, Scott.
They're muted. Yeah, they can chime in.
Yes, we're here.
Yes.
Scott, do you have anything for the applicant?
No, just kind of echo what Roger said concerning the fire lanes and traffic in and out. I heard him say that the HOA would be responsible for keeping those roads clear. I'm a little concerned about putting that responsibility on the HOA, and it may fall under Mint Hill jurisdiction to make sure those roads are staying clear, which just adds, a little more burden to our police department to make sure that that's being done.
Anything else, Scott?
No, thank you.
Kenny, are you on there?
Yes, sir.
Do you have any questions for the applicant?
No, sir, I do not. I pretty much echo all the concerns everybody else has expressed.
Okay, all right. Thank you. All right, so this, I mean, if, unless somebody else has got another question, anybody else got any more concerns? So the way we're going to do this is it's going to be like two motions. So we're going to have one motion that deals with the petition to basically either go for or against the land use plan. And so that will be the first. I need a motion around that.
Mr. Chairman, this time I'd like to make a motion to deny ZZ 20-10 because I find it to be inconsistent with the adopted land use plan. The plan recommends low density, single family development at 1 to 2 dwellings units per acre. Therefore, I find this petition not to be reasonable in the public interest based on the information presented by the applicant and that the opposition expressed from the adjacent property owners, and because the proposed density is more than double. Actually, we just found it's triple the recommended density. The additional traffic generated by the added density may exacerbate by the congestion on Lawyers Road is really concerned. The downtown master plan established an international boundary or intentional boundary for the downtown. The property is in question was not included. Therefore, the applicant is inconsistent with the downtown master plan.
Can I get a second to Roger's motion?
I'd like to second Mr. Hendricks's motion.
All right, Eric seconds it. Any more discussion? Anybody got any other issues around this? All those in favor, aye.
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 Opposed? Abstain. Okay, the second motion that I need is basically around the recommendation filed by NVR to allow the conditional district rezoning from R to RDOA. Either a favorable or unfavorable recommendation on that as on the agenda here.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I feel it necessary to make a motion to put forward an unfavorable recommendation on ZZ 20-10 for changing existing zoning of R to RDO-A for tax parcels 135, 381, -67, -66, 64, and 65.
Can I get a second to that motion?
Yeah, I'll second Roger.
All right, Eric seconds. Any more discussion? All those in favor of Roger's motion? Aye.
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 Any abstain? Any opposed? And any abstain? So the motion Roger had passed. So gentlemen, I guess it's up to you all. You know, this isn't the end of it. If y'all want to pursue it, it's up to y'all to take it from.
Certainly appreciate your consideration.
We appreciate y'all's explanations. I mean, y'all have done a good job with your presentations. I'll say that. Yes, thank you all. Okay, next item on the agenda, discussion and decision on S21-02 Meta Vista subdivision filed by Land Investment Resources LLC for preliminary subdivision approval, property located at parcel numbers 137-061-13, 137-281-54, 137-281-59, 137-281-56, and 137-281-57.
All right, thank you, sir. This is a follow-up to the rezoning that was approved in September. And since that time, the applicant's been pursuing the construction plans through Mecklenburg County. And this is a requirement in addition to the rezoning, they have to come back to you for the official subdivision approval. And I am happy to answer any questions. And I believe the applicant is online with us. If you have any questions for him.
Start that the other end. Jennifer, you have any questions on this?
I do not.
Eric,
I don't.
Roger?
One, Mr. Chairman, John, so all requirements are met and satisfactory to the town. I mean, I know you're saying what your recommendation is here, but does your department have any concerns here about this addition and change?
No, sir. So just to let you know, the way this works is the zoning was approved. So the zoning plan through the rezoning process, the commissioners approved the plan. And so what we do is just make sure that rezoning plan is in sync with the plans that now they're pursuing, and it is. So we're fine with it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Are Scott and Kenny still on here?
I have no questions.
Yes, they are.
All right, who's that, Scott?
Yes.
Kenny, you still on there?
Yes, sir. And I have no questions either.
All right. With no, I don't have any questions. I don't have any concerns. Can I get a motion for a, this is a decision. This isn't a recommendation. This is our decision. Either a favorable or unfavorable decision on this item.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to pass along a favorable recommendation on S21
Favorable decision.
favorable decision, pardon, correction, favorable decision on S21-02 and applying to the location of 4851 Wilgrove Mint Hill Road and tax parcels 137 061-13, 137 281-54, 59, 56, and 57. As stated.
Can I get a second to this motion?
I'll second it.
Jennifer seconds. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Amen. All right. Anything else? Any other business anybody have? We just take a second, John, and just talk about this. This is more of an administrative type thing, right? I mean, once we passed it the first time,
The subdivision.
yeah.
Yeah, I've thought about that as well. Well, what we're seeing now is a lot of these subdivisions are going through conditional zoning. And because of that, you're ended up seeing it twice because they're
Right.
going through the rezoning, which requires your recommendation. And then the follow-up is the subdivision approval itself, which is an ordinance requirement. But I'm definitely,
If it's a by right or type thing, I mean,
well, if it's a by right subdivision, it would only come to you
right,
for approval.
right.
Okay, so that would not go through the Board of Commissioners. But in this case, what you are seeing, it's almost 100% now, when someone comes in to look at
Conditional.
developing a subdivision in Mint Hill, they are going the conditional zoning route, because rather than what we were talking about earlier, everyone wants the acre lots, what they're really wanting to do is smaller lots now, which requires that conditional zoning. So you are seeing it twice. But we could look at possibly changing it, doing a text amendment to see if there's an easier, more efficient way to do it. Because you're right,
Well,
you're basically seeing the same plan. It's already gone through all the engineering at this point.
It doesn't really take any time for us. It
Right.
just seems kind of like, unless there is some variance in here that you wanted to bring to our attention, it seems like it's just kind of like a rubber stamp.
Yeah. Well, and I'll tell you this, we tried to make it easy on the applicant. Like, obviously the applicant, they didn't have to show up.
Right.
We're not charging them a fee for this. Basically we say, email us the plan and we'll take it to the board. So we try to make that as simple as possible. But yeah, I can look at it.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you would, just see if, let's just try to streamline it.
Sure.
All right. All right, can I get a motion? And if there's no other business, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
I know there's no discussion on this. All in favor of going? They're already hanging up out there. All right, thank you all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
If they were going